Hey there, guys. Welcome to the Retire Ready to channel. If this is your first time here, I want to say thank you for being here. And if you find this information useful, please feel free to share it with your friends. If you don't know me, my name is Renee Collins. I'm a CPA, financial planner, and I am also the founder of Retire Ready, a firm that is dedicated to helping people to develop a healthy relationship with their money so that they can save more, invest smart, and build wealth. And not just for today, but for the next generation as well. Now, this week, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. You're not going to have to just listen to my voice, but I'm going to bring on someone who's going to talk to us about money and how do we develop good, sound financial habits so that we can live a life of our choosing. My guest today is Anthony Weaver. He is the founder of an amazing podcast called About That Wallet, where he brings on financial experts and they share their stories and they tell us what can we do so that we can continue to develop good financial habits and build wealth for ourselves and for our families. So with that said, Anthony, I'm going to bring you on to this virtual stage and you can start off by telling us more about you, your financial story, your journey, and about that wallet. How are you?
Hey, Renee, thank you so much for having me on. This is an amazing opportunity. I just want to say, hey, everybody. Hopefully, you guys are having a wonderful day today. Just a quick background about me. I started the About That Water podcast during the pandemic, mostly because my wife got tired of me talking about finances and all the things I was finding out about it. And also, I got into this realm mostly because when I found out, like when I met my wife, she was my girlfriend at the time, but she was like, "Why don't you pay off your cell phone?" And I was like, "What are you talking about? I'm paying it off every monthly bill." She was like, "No, you can pay your cell phone off." And I was like, "Really?" So I called up the company and was like, "Hey, how much is it for me to pay off my phone?" And they was like, "Oh, it's $250." So I was like, "But online, my phone is only worth like $30." They was like, "Well, that's what you're paying for." I did not know that you can pay off your cell phone in one swoop at that time. Like I've heard some people do it, but I'm like, who has an extra $1,200 or $1,000 for a cell phone? I was like, I'll gladly pay the $20 a month until this thing is paid off, and I'll just trade it in and get another one because that's what I thought you're supposed to do. And then I
Mhm.
started paying it off, and I was like, cool, I got $250. Let's go ahead and pay it off and knock that out. And then that opened up a whole nother realm of things that I can start paying off. Like I knew about paying off your internet router. Like that's one of the things I was like, nah, because I used to work at Best Buy and I was like, okay, I know people buy modems all the time. So like a couple $100
Mhm.
and then just contact Comcast or Verizon and whatever you have. And they will actually hook it up and you go about it that way. But I never thought about of my personal cell phone. So that opened up a whole nother thing about like freezing credit. Then I learned about, okay, well, what other companies should I freeze my credit on? And then I started looking at like SageStream and looking at LexisNexis and so many, there's like 20 other ones out there, but we're not going to get into that today. But it just helps out. Like, I try to think about things of like, what is that one catalyst that kind of opens up your mind to everything else? And it might not be that one person that's saying it, it's usually who is saying it, and they saying it out of care and not just as a matter of fact.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that resonate with me the most. And it's the reason why I wanted to have and provide a resource for those people who don't just have those people that are around them just telling them like, hey, you can do this. It just takes a little bit of time out of your day. And if you have time to sit down and scroll on social media, you have time, just take 30-minute break and just look at your finances. And that really helped out a lot. Like I knew enough. And one of the things, like there's so many areas in life that help me out with my finances, but I have to say that one was one of the most impactful ones about paying things off that really helped me catapult my whole financial journey to where it is today. There are some other things that I did prior, which is helped me out a lot, which is the budget calendar. Like I used to,
Mhm.
those little calendars that you see on when you're in the office, they always have those free calendars just laying around. Like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, just pick one up for the year because that's the reason why I love going inside the office because everybody got some or they got them in the mail and they just don't use them.
Right.
I
Mhm.
was like, I'll take a couple of these,
Right.
one for the office, take one at home. And one of the things is that I am an old school paper and pencil kind of guy where I
Mhm.
need to see my stuff. So I would write down when my bills are due on the calendar. I would write down when my paychecks were due. I think that was one of the things that everybody loved to do. Was like, hey, this is pay week. This is payday. Like
Right.
everybody loves. They know what those days are,
Exactly.
but nobody knows when their bills are due. So it's like,
Mhm.
okay,
That's so true.
there's a disconnect, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So everybody knows when money's coming in, but they don't know when money's going out. And I think
Mhm.
that's the biggest thing. The reason why I wanted to focus on financial habits, because it's the way how we actually utilize things. And
Mhm.
habit of it, like the definition of a habit, is just a usual way of behavior, just something that
Exactly.
somebody does often.
Mhm.
And then I was like, okay, well, our behaviors is just a way of that we act and conduct ourselves around people
Mhm.
and or things. And by looking at our behaviors, you can actually tell. That's why they always say birds of a feather flock together because you're
Mhm.
looking at those behaviors that those people are doing. And more than likely, you're going to fall into those same behaviors and it becomes a habit over time. And by understanding where the money is coming from, everybody knows where the money's coming from, but we just don't know where it's going. And
Right.
that is where I want to help people out. So that's the
Yeah.
reason why I call it the about that wallet, because we know the wallet, money coming into our wallet, but where the heck is it going
I know
afterward?
that's right. That is,
Right.
that is so very true, and that's what I find when I'm working with clients too, is that, generally speaking, the money coming in is the easy part, you know?
Yes.
We know that it's coming from usually it's maybe one or two sources, it's either coming
Hmm.
from the job, maybe it's coming from some investments, but the key is managing where it's actually going. One of the things that you said too was that I think is interesting is, like the start of your journey. It started with something so small, with just that just kind of opened up your eyes to possibilities. And I think that's important because I think oftentimes people get overwhelmed with all the information that is available on the internet about money. And then you'll have financial experts that are talking about different ways to do different things. And so people feel like, well, I don't know where to start because if this worked for this person, how do I know it's going to work for me? Or maybe it's not going to work for me. Or maybe I tried it before and it didn't work for me? And so
See,
you know what I'm saying? And
yes.
so people get so overwhelmed with all of that. So I think it's good that you found something that just you said, wow, this is interesting. And then it opened up this door for you to explore even more. And one of the things that I would say for anybody that's looking at this or watching this is that just start at one place. Start with something small and then continue to grow and educate yourself so that you can figure out what is the best path for you. There's a reason why we call finance personal
Yes.
finance.
Yes. Yes. Speak on it. Go ahead.
Because you have to find your personal journey along this path, right? So,
Mhm.
one of the things that I'd like for you just to kind of expand on is talk about, some of the financial mistakes that you see people making and what are some of the resolutions that they can take so they can overcome it.
Yeah, so one of the financial mistakes that I hear a lot because that is one of the questions on my show,
Mhm.
and a lot of people feel as though the mistakes it's only like only hindsight 2020 it's a mistake. It's not a
Mhm.
mistake when they're doing it
Right.
because you would think you're doing best or what you can with what you have with the education that you have and the knowledge that you currently have, and so it's not really a mistake until afterwards. And so all that to say, it goes back to, like you said, personal finance is personal. But one of the things that I've noticed that a lot of people, I won't say it's a mistake. I would just say more of a thing that they didn't think about
Right.
is where they actually spending their money on. and majority of the time it is food.
Mhm.
And, like, figuring out, "Okay, well, I'm going out all the time, or I'm ordering food out somewhere," or, you just wanna pay the meal for everybody because you wanna be generous and stuff like
Mhm.
that. So, I would say we have more of an understanding. We can see the immediate catch is food, and that's our biggest expense. I would say hands down. Even when Warren Buffett was interviewed, what do you spend most money on? He said food too.
Did
It's
he
like,
really? I didn't know that.
yes, because everybody loves to eat,
Yes.
and I would think that's universal. We have to eat to live. So
Right, right,
it's
and I
like,
think
how do
the other
we
thing,
change that?
yeah, I'm sorry, I don't mean to step on your
No,
words.
no,
I
you're
was
good.
just thinking, like, the other thing that I think that's around food is
Mhm.
people, relationships,
Yes.
connection, and I think that's one of the reasons why we probably love food, and why that is typically that highest expense, especially if you're dining out a lot, so I just wanted to throw that in there. Sorry, I didn't mean
I
to
know you did it.
interrupt.
It's okay. Because like, think about it, like, I go to a lot of happy hours, but
Mhm,
however, that's how I got most of my jobs actually, was because
mhm,
I was going to these happy hours. Either you building a connection, you building a network, and your
right,
net worth is your network.
mhm.
And having that understanding is like, even, we went out to eat, like, how many times in New Orleans? Like,
I know, we
we
had a
were
great time in
always
New
eating.
Orleans.
Right.
That's all we did.
Right. So that was my biggest expense, more so than the hotel, the flight, and even the Uber, because the flight was free because of credit card points. The
Mhm,
hotel was subsidized because of credit card points. Like,
mhm,
I spent more of my money eating,
right,
and I don't have a shame in it. I don't think it's a mistake. I think
mhm,
it just happens sake for where it is. And because when you talk about the personal finance, and I was thinking about it, of couponing. So for those of
mhm.
you who didn't know, I used to coupon extremely well, where they
Oh,
used to actually have to
excellent.
pay me back and everything like that,
Oh,
like
wow.
long receipts and everything. That's crazy. Um, but the thing about it though, when it comes to couponing, most of the stuff is personal. So like, at the time I was with my ex, and she had like 3 cats that she was taking care of, along with like the neighborhood cats. She was really into the cats. But I was the one doing all the shopping. So because I was couponing, meaning that I was getting the kitty litter, the cat food, and stuff like that. So yes, I would ask other couponers like, "Hey, do you guys have any cat food?" Because most of them had dogs. So I'll give
Okay.
them the dog coupons, they'll give me the cat coupons, and it's kinda like started off that way. But
Mhm,
I started my journey in couponing was, like, starting small with tubes of
mhm.
toothpaste. When I found out I can get tubes of toothpaste for free, I was like, "Oh, this is amazing." Then it ventured out to everything else.
Right,
Like, you have to start small in your journey and build that
exactly.
habit, build that muscle, and just try it.
Right.
Because everybody's so afraid, like, "Hey, it worked for them, it could work for me." Yes, it could work,
Mhm.
but remember, like, trying to get those six-pack abs, like, you gotta build that habit. You gotta start first off, well, what are you eating? Like,
Right,
back to
right.
food again. Like, what are
Exactly.
you eating? What are your habits around food? Are you sitting down while you eat? Are you standing up while you eat?
Mm.
After you do you eat and then you fall asleep, or do you eat, go for a walk, or, you do your laundry or something actual, like, to get your body moving after you eat?
Right.
Or do you, like, there's so many different things that go around, but if you really want that six pack abs, you looking at the person with the six pack abs telling you how they got the six pack abs. You
Mhm.
don't want a person without the six pack abs telling you how to get the six pack abs. They might got some tips because they thought about it, they tried it, it just didn't work out for them, but it might work out for you. So,
Mhm. Exactly.
mm,
And one of the things I like to say is that I love the reframe. So you said instead of calling it mistakes, let's call it something different. Let's reframe the way we think about mistakes. And I think that's really important. And even on my financial journey, that's one of the things that I definitely, noted was I made the decision with my
mm,
money at that time with the knowledge and the resources that I had. And that allowed me to forgive myself for any mishaps that I made. And I think what's important there is that it also takes away some of that shame, that guilt, that judgment that we oftentimes feel when we don't necessarily have the outcome that we want to have when we make financial decisions. So I love that reframe. And I just wanted to just kind of note that because I think that's important, especially from an emotional standpoint. And then I just want to piggyback on the whole idea around the food that I think
Right.
that's the highest cost for everybody. For most people, because I know even
Right.
in my own, when I look at my own financial, budget or my spending plan, that's the number one cost for me. And I realize that, I like that human connection. And so I like going out with friends, I may go out, to a happy hour, I just like, being around people. And so in doing that, oftentimes I not always in the house. I'm out
Right.
and about and meeting people, and a lot of times that requires money. But I think what's important is just including that in your spending plan. So if you
Mhm.
know that you are that person, then put that into your spending plan. And I just wanted to note that. I love that reframe because that's
Yeah.
important.
Because one of the things that we have when we comes to that reframe, we also have to reframe the way how we look at our habits as well.
Mhm.
So there is a guy, Charles Duhigg, who wrote the book The Power of Habit,
Mhm.
and having that understanding of what a habit is, and he utilized because he was a psychologist and like studying people who like habits and so forth. And one of the things that he came up with was called a habit loop. For those of you who are
Mhm.
not familiar, it starts off with the trigger, then you come up with your routine, and then you end off with a reward. That is the basis of a habit. Now, so when it comes to trigger, your trigger could be like, hey, all right, I'm hungry. Like, let's go with happy hour, for instance, because you like to
Mhm.
say it's social and everything like that.
Mhm.
Everybody's coming up with ideas and stuff like that. Like, hey, let's go out to eat. Let's go out to eat. Where are we going to go out and blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's your trigger. Okay,
Mhm.
what is the next thing that you do when you hear somebody say, okay, we're about to go out to eat? Do you start thinking, like, okay, well, I got this bill coming up. I got that bill. What am I going to eat when I get there? Like, this is your routine now. You start thinking about it. Now,
Mhm.
your reward is that you actually got a chance to go out there,
Mhm.
have a good time, and you're actually there with the people that you really want to be with, and not so much the food itself, but you were just there in the room. And
Mhm.
so you can look at it that way and take this. If you guys are listening, just write down all of your triggers. Think about the small stuff. What made you click on this particular episode? Like,
Mhm.
what was your trigger? Was it the thumbnail? Was it just you're scrolling through? Was it, because you like Renee so much? Like, what was it that made you click on it? And then your routine is okay, you're going to listen, but while you're listening, some people could listen while they are eating or cleaning up the room, doing their dishes or something like that. These are the things that I want you to think about. And then your reward is that, hey, I actually got some value out of this.
Right.
And there's a little extra piece that he added in, which is, I usually call it the feelings. Like,
Mhm.
how did you feel about it? Like, what is your reward? Your reward could be a feeling,
Mhm.
but at the end of it, you feel satisfied
Right.
until you start doing it again. What is that next trigger again? Like when you lose that high, like the sugar rush high, like you get it, you're all
Mhm.
excited,
Mhm.
like let's go, let's go, let's go. And then next thing you know, you get that crash. You're like, man, I need to go get some more sugar. Like just start doing it again.
That's true.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. That is so very true. And I love that because that is kind of the essence of building, habits.
Mhm.
Um, I guess the next question would really be, since we're understanding how to kind of reframe some of the financial decisions that we made, is like, how do we build on those good financial habits? So you're talking about, the book, was it, what is his name? Charles
Charles Duhigg.
Duhigg. Yeah, I feel like I've seen that book before. It's a
I usually
yellow
have
book.
it.
It's like yellow
Yep.
and red. Yep, that looks like it.
There we go. There we go. I
Yep,
usually have it at my
exactly.
fingertips, like because my bookshelf is set up so all the people that I met at FinCon are in the
Uh-huh.
front, and then everybody else is in the back. So I try to support everybody. So yes,
Well, you'll meet
Charles Duhigg.
Charles next. Maybe not at FinCon, but you'll meet him. We're gonna put that out into the
Okay,
universe.
yeah, let's make that happen. So, oh no, go ahead, go ahead. You had
No, no,
something.
I just want you to talk more about, the financial habits. How can we build on those good financial habits?
Yeah, so when it comes to building on them, you first have to figure out what are the alternatives. Because one of the things that in the whole habit loop, you're actually changing your routine.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
granted, like you're, let's going to go back to the happy hour side of the house because I had to
Mhm.
change my way of how I approach happy hour as well, which
Okay.
is all right, cool. Everybody want to go out to happy hour. I was like, cool. I know my routine, which is to order some fries and a drink.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
usually have a 2 drink minimum. So I'm usually get a Long Island to get started. You
Okay,
know,
you
I get
go for the gusto.
I
Okay.
but
You going for the Long Island. You are not playing, okay?
yeah, no. And then I ask for a water, and then I'll get me a
Oh, and you
whiskey
get some
sour
water
afterwards.
too.
Yeah,
Okay.
I get some water,
So
right.
you chase it with some water. I got you.
Yeah. And then I'll get a whiskey sour afterwards, and then,
Okay.
no matter what for the
You
day.
bringing it down.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But the fries, I know for instance, the fries are usually on everybody's appetizers, and they usually run about $5. Then I
Okay.
know a drink is about, 10 to $15. I was like, okay, cool. I'm already $20 in. And then a whiskey sour is like maybe another $10 or $8.
Mhm.
So max I'm spending is about $30. Now, for me, to change that trigger, I mean, to change my routine, say if instead of me getting that extra drink or even getting the Long Island starting off, how about I just start off with the water and fries?
Mhm. Mm.
And
Mhm.
then as the day go on, I'm like, okay, and I still want to have a little something, I would probably get just a Long Island
Okay.
or whichever one that they have as a specialty thing is like cheaper on the menu. It get an actual
Mhm.
happy hour, or I would choose the time of day.
Okay.
So, say if they want to do in the morning, I know most restaurants don't have happy hours during the morning.
Mhm.
I will say like, hey, can we do something in the afternoon, closer to 3, 4 o'clock, so it actually around that time frame, so you can still get all the stuff, but at a cheaper cost.
Right.
So
Mhm.
you can look at when it comes to your finances, think about ways that you can still get the things that you want, but at a lower cost.
Right.
So either you might not be brand new. So if you really want this new car, does it really have to be brand new? Can it just be new to you?
Oh, I
So
like
like a
that.
used
Mhm.
car,
Mhm.
it could just be a couple years out,
Right.
but it already depreciated as much as it can anyway. Because as soon as it hit, bloop, off the,
Yep, that's it.
the
Yeah,
thing,
that's
that's
it.
it.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. And I don't think I've ever purchased a new car because I've always remembered that whole idea around depreciation of the car, you
Mhm.
know? I mean, so I bought dealer cars that have been like a year, year and a half old, and they really take care of those cars. So it's
Yeah.
not like, it's going to have a whole bunch of issues, but I think that's a good point. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So again, you gotta, I would say, going back to the routine, you really have to hone in on a routine because your
Mhm.
triggers are always going to be the same triggers, or you can try to change the triggers. I would
Mhm.
say, think about when you're buying food. So, say if your child all of a sudden has a nut allergy,
Mhm.
okay, now you got to treat as if you have that same allergy, which means
Mm.
that when you go inside the grocery store, you're avoiding the peanut butter aisle. You're
Mhm.
avoiding all the snacks that has peanut butter. You're going straight to other things. So you finding another alternative to still get that sweetness
Right.
or that saltiness or whatever that you have in your food without injuring or killing somebody. So if you really want to hone in on everything, that's the reason why I always say you can change a habit within 30 seconds. What is
Mm.
that fear?
Mm.
Because they keep saying like, oh, it takes 30. No, it don't
Right.
take 30 days. No,
I
it
was about
takes,
to say that. Yeah, they do. They
yeah,
say that it's somewhere between 20 to 30 days to change a
yeah.
habit. Mhm.
No, 30 seconds.
Oh, I
Because
love
like
that.
right now, I mean, think about it, like what is your biggest fear? Like, hey, you don't want to go out there and get impaled by a car when you go
Mhm.
walk outside. That's the
Mhm.
fear. So
Mhm.
to look both ways. You change that 30-second real quick. Like
Right.
it don't
Right.
take
Right.
30 days to figure out you're gonna get hit by a car walking out in the street. No.
Right. That's a good point. So it sounds like to me that it's also based on that motivation,
Yes.
you
Well,
know?
I would say
What would you say?
motivation and fear.
And fear.
Fear is
And fear is
yes.
a good driver. You're right. Fear is a
Yeah.
good driver to change behavior because we don't
Yeah.
want to be in pain, you know,
Mhm.
and fear can be painful, you know.
Yes.
So I think that's an excellent point, is that, using that fear as the motivator. to
Oh,
make the change.
it's a tactic in every business.
It really
Think about
is.
it. When it comes to finances, what do we mostly talk about? You're gonna have the fear of not having money,
Yes.
right? When
Yep.
it
The
comes
fear
to
of
when
running out of money, right? In
right.
retirement. Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to we can go to church for those of you who are religious, the fear of not being saved.
Yes.
They use
Mm-hmm.
that a lot. So in politics, the fear of not looking out for your grandbabies or your grandkids by putting this person in office.
Yep. Yep.
When you go to jobs, there's like the fear of being fired. Now your income is being impacted. Like
Right.
there are so many fear is everywhere. It's just
Mm-hmm.
how do you that's the trigger, you know what it is. Now you got to figure out your routine. How are you going to actually play the game so that you actually have that barrier of support in whatever it is. And that is the way, if you really want to change your routine and your finances, you need to figure out what is your fear. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
us spend our money based on the fears that we already have. Because for me,
Mm.
I'm running away from the way how I lived in the past and the way how I
Mm.
grew up, which is we didn't have electricity on all the time. We didn't have food in the house all the time. I remember making wish sandwiches where we only had wish there was some meat in between the bread. Like that's my wish
Right,
sandwiches. Like
right,
I
right,
had
right. I get that.
right.
Wow. Well, let me ask you a question then. So, if fear is our big motivator, right?
Yeah.
That kind of like that driving force, that emotion that is creating the change. I guess then how do we overcome the fear, right? Because we don't want to live in fear. Because, like I said, fear is painful,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So, how do we overcome that fear so that we can build healthier habits?
The it goes back to I won't say we'll change the way how we live our lives in a
Mm-hmm.
sense of, you have some of those people who say like, I would never live in a city. I only live
Mm-hmm.
in a county because
Mm-hmm.
they don't want to be around a lot of people. They have that
Mm-hmm.
fear of being around a lot of people. They want the
Mm-hmm.
open space. They don't like to hear ambulances run up and down the road all the time or hearing
Right.
sirens and stuff like that. Some people say like, hey, I'm afraid to live, like most people with PTSD, they won't live near train tracks because of the train
Mm-hmm.
tracks sound like other things. So like
Mm-hmm.
that fear and
It's
everything like
triggering.
that.
Mm-hmm.
So and it goes back to your triggers. Like if you don't want to be triggered at all, you avoid those. But again, remember personal finance is personal. So everybody's fear is going to be a little different. You can't run away from all of it. But what
Mm-hmm.
you can do is position yourself so that you don't have to worry about in case something does come up, you're available. So like how you said, running out of money when it comes to retirement. Because I'm just thinking like some people don't even get a chance to retire because they're afraid of they don't have anything else to do. Their job
Right.
is their identity.
Yes.
And so it's like when you ask somebody how they doing, all they can do is talk about their job. Like, no,
Mm-hmm.
how are you really doing? Like
Right.
these are the things that
Mm-hmm.
conversations a lot of people don't have. But it's hard to say you can't get rid of fear. Fear is part
Right.
of life. I would
Yep.
just
I
have to
agree
say it
with
that way.
that.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I
We
can't think
just
of a
learn
way out
to
of it. Yeah.
manage it. Yeah, we have to learn how
Yes.
to manage it. I agree with that.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that's what's important for people to understand is that fear is always going to be there as an undercurrent, and
Yes.
it's just something that we can never ever fully get away from. And it's also fear is there to really help protect us.
Mhm.
Because that's what our brain does. Our brain is always looking for ways to protect us from whatever the unknown or uncertainty is. But I think we have to learn how to manage the fear, recognize it, be aware that it's there, and then, like you said, find ways to, kind of replace that,
Yeah.
find a way to kind of replace that fear with something else. So
'Cause,
I think that's important.
I want to bring up something. If you think about, I guess, personalities and like abilities to do things. So think of an animal like a bird. When it's out
Mm-hmm.
on the branch, and you're like, man, that branch would fall. If anything, if I was on that branch, it would have fell off, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that bird
Mm-hmm.
just sitting there, comfortable, just chilling, hanging out, bouncing on with the wind,
Mm-hmm.
because it knows its wings that support itself.
Mm-hmm.
It trusts
Mm-hmm.
in itself that actually can leap off of that.
Right.
When you see the big cats get up on the trees and everything like that, they was like, oh no, they might fall and hurt themselves.
Mm-hmm.
No, they conditioned themselves, they jumped off enough, they build up that muscle for that.
Right.
Some people are afraid of bankruptcy
Mm-hmm.
because they never been through it. For
Mm-hmm.
those who've been through bankruptcy, they was like, oh, I survived it. I can do it
Mm-hmm.
again. in another 7
Let's
years.
hope
Like,
not,
you
but
know, right.
okay.
Right. Hope
Okay.
not, but they've been
Right,
through that
right,
process.
right.
And it's
But
like
they
some people.
understand the process. Right. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
fear and the opposite of fear is usually opportunity and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what people say.
Mm-hmm.
But it really depends on if you're educated enough to actually go through that process. And you
Mm-hmm.
have to, again, like how we said before when we started this episode, which is start small.
Right.
So if there's like, for me, I'm getting up to 40, I'm not jumping off a chair anymore. Like when I was a
Mm-hmm.
kid, I'll jump off a chair all the
Right,
time.
right, right, right.
Now I'm like, shucks, which knee is going to pop this time? Like, I'm like,
Exactly.
but also if I wanted to get there, I'll start small. I'll start jumping off the curves and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
slowly build my muscle back up. Like, okay, I can
Right.
do this and
Right.
trust myself that I can do this. And I think that's
Exactly.
what it is. But also some fears you just can't avoid. Like there's like they say with the cat and a mouse type deal. Not all
Mm-hmm.
cats want to eat the mouse, but the mouse don't know that. All it
Mm-hmm.
sees is a predator going to
Right.
try to kill it. It's going to
Right,
keep running. So
exactly. Right, exactly. Absolutely. One of the things that I wanted to talk about too was just like creating a budget, spending plan. I work with clients who are just I just don't want to create a budget. I don't want to create a spending plan. Do you ever like run across situations where you feel like maybe a budget or a spending plan just doesn't work for some people? And then what habits can they put in place if they don't want to have a spending plan or they don't want to have a budget? Are there things that they can do so that they can still achieve their financial goals?
yes, so I can't take this term because this is something that I've heard Tiffany Aliche say.
Mhm.
Think about your budget as like your parent. Your
Mhm.
parent is really there to kind of help guide you and tell
Mhm.
you not that you can't do this, it's just like not right now.
Mm.
And your budget is more so of like, or your spending plan is just giving you the allowance to say, like, yes, you have the money now to go do what you want to do. Go
Mhm.
head on and be forth and have fun with it.
Mhm.
Um, so I would say just reframe the way how we look at the
Mhm.
budget. And people who don't want to do that, I would say at least try it
Mhm.
because usually they don't. Again, it goes back to what we said in the beginning. It's like a lot of people don't know what they're spending their money on.
Right.
Just take
Mhm.
that first, might take an hour,
Mhm.
to really jot down everything that where your money's coming in. Look at
Mhm.
your old credit card statements. If you got multiple
Mhm.
credit cards, pull out all of them and
Mhm.
really just take a highlighter, different colors for different things.
Mhm.
You don't even have to write it down. You don't have to write
Right.
down the budget. Just say like, hey, what I mostly spend my money on,
Right.
and then just write it down on the calendar, and then just
Mhm.
start going forward.
Mhm.
And you don't have to put yourself on a budget, but when you start to see where your money is
Mhm.
going and
Mhm.
what is coming up and everything like that, you're ultimately going to change anyway. You're going to
Right.
change the way you
Mhm.
spend. You're like, if I'm spending $200 just on ordering out, but I really would like to go on this vacation, all I need is $200 to
Mhm.
go eat in another country. Like,
Right.
mind blown right there. Like, I'll
Right,
change
right,
that
right,
right now.
right. Exactly.
Right.
And I think that's important because it kind of ties into your values. It ties into
Yeah.
what's most important to you. And if
Mhm.
it's something that's really important to you, I think a lot of people are going to figure out how to make it happen, you
Yes.
know? So if it's that vacation, then even if you've never done a spending plan before or budget, then you're going to be thinking about, oh, I really want to do this. I want to do
Mhm.
XYZ. So let me dig deep into understanding where my resources are going so that I can find the money and make it happen. So I think
Yeah.
that's important, as well. Mhm, go
So
ahead.
that's one reason why, like I set up for my clients is like to do a 2 hour session at a
Mm-hmm.
time is mostly because that first 2 hours, we just really digging into what's happening in your life, where you're
Mm-hmm.
spending most of your money, where are things at. We're not talking about budgeting at all. We're just trying to find the
Mm-hmm.
money.
Right.
Then that second time frame we meet up, that's where we can start strategizing a little bit more about like, okay, how can we what are your goals, what are the things that you really want to start going after? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
cool, let's go on and lay this out. You're gonna cut back on this, you're gonna cut back on that, or because we finding money in the first session We
Oh,
finding out where
nice.
we find an extra money. And
Mhm.
what that means is like if you got to cancel some subscriptions, you need to
Mhm.
either stop ordering out so much. Maybe you just cut
Mhm.
it back in half,
Mhm.
half a day or something like that, or maybe a whole week or so, like depending on how much you're
Just
spending.
depend on the client, right,
Right.
exactly. Mhm. Mhm.
And then once we find that money, now that second time around, we looking at like, okay, what can we really put that money towards? What are the values that you're looking into? What are you trying to get out of it?
Mhm.
And then let's move forward in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I think that's good, sound advice. The other thing is that I want to talk about is debt, because I
Mm,
feel like debt is one of those things that I see and experience that really keeps people from living the life that they really want to live. Let's just talk about how can we utilize, financial habits so that we can get out of debt.
okay. Because I love how these questions are building up on each other. It's great. So getting getting yourself out of debt when it comes to debt itself, like you have the debt, yes, it's there. Take that snapshot. You got to look in the mirror and just say, okay, look, I have this debt. I'm looking at it. I have one or two options, or you can do both at the same time. One, you can actually start saving the money, which means that you got to cut back on something else.
Mhm.
And then so that's the defense side of the house, which means like you looking at everything like how can I cut back on this? I'm not going out as much. It's a temporary setback. Do I need to move back into my parents' house or move in with somebody else, my friends, local family members?
Mhm.
Then you look at it like, okay, well, I cut back as far as I can. When am I going to play offense?
Mm.
And offense is actually changing your income,
Right.
and meaning that you start looking at your job, not that you hate it. You might hate the job, but look at those transferable skills. What
Mhm.
is it that your boss is looking at? What is the thing that your boss's boss is looking at? Even though your job may not pay that much, take on extra skills,
Mhm.
take on extra side jobs. Meaning, for an example, like at my job, like I'm not hired to do, like I'm not doing what I was hired to do.
Right.
Right now, I'm just like, okay, there's a bigger need that's going on, and I notice that nobody is paying attention to it,
Mhm.
but everybody sees it.
Right.
So, small example, like updating a website.
Mhm.
I'll update the website because it cuts back on the traffic and everything like
Mhm.
that, so everybody get all the nice, lovely accesses to what they need to do
Mhm.
instead of sending all these informations in and stuff like that. It gets ridiculous. But having that understanding like okay, I'm adding value to not only management but also to everybody in the chain because this is the front facing, this is what hits everybody directly up front.
Mhm.
Then you can work on the back end side of the house of like how can then you can start looking at your job and so forth. But
Mhm.
when you're at your current job you need to start looking into that. That's when you start looking at your transition side of the house of
Mhm.
okay, I did everything that I could in this particular position. Don't have animosity. You actually took time out to have that conversation with your supervisor. Like, hey, this is a great opportunity. Is there anything else that I can assist you with or anything I can do more? Is there any certifications that you can actually go out and get? Are
Mhm.
there conferences like FinCon that you can go to kind of
Right.
get expand your mind on a particular topic of finances,
Mhm.
or even not even just finances? Just we talked about what book publishing, marketing. Like we
Right.
meet so many people
Exactly.
in different industries.
Mhm.
Um, so this is part of the offense side of the house, which means
Mhm.
that we now trying to find ways to make more money. And having to make more money, you need to find those transferable skills.
Mhm.
And once you have those transferable skills under your belt, you put that on your resume. You go to that next person like, hey, you don't talk bad about your prior job.
Right.
What you're going to bring up is how did you take them from X now they over to Y now? So how
Right.
did you take them from only making what was your impact at that job?
Exactly.
Excuse me. Did you actually take them from $10,000 to now they making $20,000? So you increase, like you double their income
Mhm.
just based on this one strategic move that you created because you
Mhm.
had that transferable skills, because you went to a conference or you got that particular certification or now you can say like how the processes have improved from, first you needed 10 people to do this job, now you only need 2 people to do the job now, and now that those
Exactly.
other people, those extra hands, are actually able to produce more inside that company. Like these are the things that you want to start looking into. I love strategizing things as well. So I could
I
talk
can
about this all
tell.
day.
I can tell.
uh,
I love it.
yeah. So once you have those skills, then and you've been like, cool, because you wrote this up on your resume, and you can actually prove that you walk the walk, talk the talk. You can say like, hey, this will be a value add when you go for these interviews. Um, and I can't take credit for this because I like Mindy. Mindy is great. If you guys haven't seen Mindy, with
Who's
Tiffany
Mindy?
Aliche. Tiffany Aliche and Mindy, they do the Brown Ambition.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep, yep. I
Yeah,
know Mindy.
Mandy.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
Mandy.
I
I'm
remember
sorry.
her because she was at FinCon.
Yep, she was a FinCon. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
So, so she talks heavy about, when it comes to interviews and actually knowing
Mm-hmm.
your worth and actually how
That's
to
right.
do those interviews. When you go through those transitions, when they talk about pay,
Mm-hmm.
most of the time you can easily negotiate that extra 20K for your job
Mm-hmm.
when your resume is nice and you can
Right.
actually talk about what you did.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you're not getting paid, and a lot of times you're going to do the job where it doesn't pay you to do the work, but
Mm-hmm.
learn on the job. I mean, they pay
Yes.
you to fail. They
Yeah.
pay you to learn. Like
Anthony,
you
I
can,
have to jump all over this. I do,
okay.
because one of the things that I will see people say is, oh, like if you go on social media or something, like, oh, I can't believe that they want me to do this and they're not going to pay me more money to do it. And
Hmm.
my thought is like, man, what a great opportunity.
Right.
What a great opportunity to jump into, a place that you can learn a new skill, because
Hmm.
that skill is yours forever. You've just
Yes.
made yourself more valuable. And it
Hmm.
doesn't have to be at that current employer. There is a
Yep.
quote that I often say, like on social media, and it's by Brian Tracy. I read it in one of his books, and he said that you never work for yourself. No, he said you never work for anyone else. You always work for yourself. And I
Yes.
thought, whoa, that is so mind blowing. That was like a phrase, a quote that the first time I heard it, it kind of changed my paradigm, my
Hmm.
thinking around working. So I don't work for anyone now, but when I did at that time, I stopped thinking from a standpoint of like, I can't believe they want me to do this and they're not paying me more to do it, these extra
Right.
roles and responsibilities, to a place of where, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to take that skill set and I'm going to
Hmm.
learn it. I'm going to master it. And then even if you don't pay me more, I've just made myself more valuable for someone else. I just had to jump on that because that is
No,
good
you're
stuff.
right. Right. Because this is all part of the offense side of the house. And it's like, even if you're working at McDonald's, I never worked at fast food, but I have worked at fast casual food, like,
Hmm.
some of the fast, I
Like
will
a
say, like
Applebee's or
dining
something
rest.
like
Yeah,
that.
like
Yeah. Okay.
Applebee's or
Right.
something like
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
Um, we're not sponsoring them, so I can't say exactly.
Right. Now
So,
we're not sponsoring any of that. Okay. Let's
right.
be clear. They're not giving us any money.
Right. Right. So, but at the restaurant, it was like cool. I was a line cook, so I actually like helped with the preparation of dealing with shrimp and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I learned a lesson like, hey, you when you throwing out shrimp, you're not supposed to use hot water. You're supposed to use cold water because you're
Hmm.
actually cooking the shrimp at the same time. I was like, oh, I didn't know.
Like who
So that's
knew?
why they kicked me off that because I messed up so much shrimp. I messed up so much shrimp. But they paid me to learn that process. I would have
Exactly.
never known.
Exactly.
Um, and there's so many other books out there that I would say that people should look take time out to read. It's like the fulfillment book, which is talking about like Amazon, like how they go through that whole process. Like when you go to these different jobs, you start realizing it's about you, but also like think about the question that you should ask your boss every time you go into work. Hey boss, is there anything you want me to help you out with today? Or is there anything that's bothering you that you couldn't get to today or you couldn't get to yesterday that I can help out with today?
Hmm.
And just continue to be that value add. Even when you're about to
Right.
go to lunch, like midday or something like that, just check in with the boss just to kind of see where they're at. It's
Hmm.
very important.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you'll
I,
learn
I
at something.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, when we're living in times of uncertainty, like now, every time you turn on the news, it's like, oh, there's a recession coming, this is coming, it's all this doom and gloom, right? And so if a company is struggling and they're at a place where they have to make those, termination decisions, if you're the one that's in the boss's face saying, hey, you need help with anything? Can I help? What's going on? Guess what? You're going to be at the low end of that termination pole. Okay. They're
Mhm.
not trying to let you go. When they're looking to make those type of decisions, they're going to keep their most valuable people for as long as they possibly can. So I think that's just such a great point. And of course, again, it's just going to make you more valuable. Good
Yeah, I had
stuff.
yeah, because I
Go
had
ahead.
somebody call in during my live show, and she was
Mm-hmm.
like, I just lost my job yesterday." And I
Mm,
was like, "What did you mean by that?" Like, she was like, "Yeah, they just called up and just say, 'Hey, we don't need you anymore.'"
mm,
So, luckily, she's been through layoffs before, but
mm-hmm.
usually most layoffs, they take time. So, they will
Mm-hmm.
let people know, like, "Hey, in a year in advance, 6 months
Mm-hmm.
in advance," and at least
Mm-hmm.
that's what she said. They
Okay.
let her know,
Mm-hmm.
several in advance, but this time it was just, like, straight cut. So, a lot of
Oh
businesses
wow.
are just doing very cutthroat at this time.
Mm. Oh,
And
wow.
so if you're not financially set up and
Mhm,
listening to podcasts like this one, podcasts like mine or any others where that you just kind of not sure where to go, I
mhm,
would definitely say to start off with anybody who's looking to kind of figure out where to start is
mhm,
to first invest in yourself.
mhm,
And I mean monetarily invest, not invest in education. Yes, that's great. But if you're not putting away money into like a high yield savings account or something like that, just for that time frame that you might get let go, think about your monthly expenses when we're talking about cutting back on things. Yes, you play
mhm,
defense enough where you cut
mhm.
back enough. Now that you play that defense, and part of that defense is actually having that money inside that high yield savings account,
Mhm.
just so that in case emergencies happen where you lose your job or they cut you for any reason, or there's like a family medical emergency, you have at least a month or 3 months or even a year worth of expenses
Mhm.
put away because you never know. And the
Right.
way how things are happening right now is it's terrible what's going on.
Right, right. I agree. I agree. I think the key to me has always been to understand that life happens, and life happens to all of us, and we may not know when it's going to happen. So let's prepare for it. I think
Yeah.
that's what's really important. Well, Anthony, this has been awesome.
Oh
Okay,
yeah, we'll
you
talk about
you gave us some
that.
great nuggets. Okay, some things to really think about, especially like around our jobs and our skill sets, and not just think in terms of just the expense side, because you're right, there's only so much you can cut in expenses, and then we have to start looking at that other lever,
Mhm.
that income lever, and how can we maximize that. So that has been like really a good nugget for people to take away, along with all the other great financial habit tips that you've given. Can you let people know, how can they, reach out to you? Where are you located? Where can they get some more of this good information?
Also, yeah, so you can actually check me out on aboutthatwallet.com,
Hmm.
and I'm on YouTube and Instagram and somewhat on Facebook. But you can follow me at most of anywhere else at about that wallet, and I'm also on Twitter or X as well. So
Okay,
check me out.
excellent. And I'll make sure that we have all that information like in our description on the YouTube channel. Now, before I let you go, I'm gonna
Okay.
add some fun to this, okay?
Okay. Okay.
So I
I'm
get to
ready.
I get to ask you some little fun questions, right?
Okay.
Starting with, what is the craziest thing that you ever saved up money to buy?
The craziest thing I saved up money to
Or maybe
buy.
even unique.
Um, I would say a bike.
Okay.
Like, an actual pedal bike because, reason why I did it was because I was living, like, 3 miles away from my job, and I was like, "You know
Mhm.
what? I'm tired of driving back and forth only 3 miles, like, let me get a bike to kinda get some exercise," and
I love
so that
that.
was one of the thing, and it was my first like, I still have the bike, I paid $600 for it,
Mhm.
and because it's customizable and all that fun stuff,
Oh,
it's
nice.
yeah, because when you paying that kind of money for a bike, and they was like, "Oh, this is a low end bike." I was like, "Low end? How high these bikes cost?" They was like $2,000. I was
Oh
like,
my
"For a bike?"
goodness.
Yeah,
Wow, wow.
yeah.
See, I'm used to bikes that they used to have at Toys R Us for like
Oh,
100,
the
200 bucks.
right.
I don't know if they had those anymore.
Oh, they still got them. They so
Oh,
heavy
do they?
though. When
Okay.
in comparison, like, I could lift my bike up with, like, 2 fingers, but
Oh.
the heavier bikes, you gotta get 2 hands on there. It's
Right,
crazy. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. I have not been on a bike in years,
Okay.
but again, it is good exercise. It really is.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's see. What's one financial goal that you would love to achieve this year?
This year, financial goal is to actually sell this property that I got in,
Oh, some
DC.
investment property?
Yeah, I wanna sell it, so
Nice.
that's one of my financial goals. I'm not gonna make any money off of it, it's just that,
Mhm.
it's just a loss. It's a learning experience, and
Yep.
this would kinda wish I had a job that would actually pay me to learn this experience, but here we are, it's out of my pocket, so
Right, exactly. It's a
Right.
learning lesson. I love it's like
Yes.
that stepping stone to growth. That's how we learn though. It really
I like
is,
that, yeah.
Yep, yep, that's how we learn. So, if you had $1,000,000, if money is
Mhm.
like no option, what would you do?
If I had $1,000,000, well, the first thing, I will probably do is set up a trust.
Mhm.
Um, I'm not even sure who what for, probably, like, the rest of my family members, I have to figure that
Mhm.
out.
Yeah.
But I'll probably put in, like, maybe 500,000.
Mhm.
The You said 100,000,000 or just 1,000,000?
Just a million, Anthony.
Oh, just 1,000,000? Oh. 'Cause 1,000,000 isn't that much anymore now that I think
I
about it.
know, it's so funny.
Yeah,
You know what's funny is that I asked Rakim the same question, right?
yeah.
Our financial therapist, Rakim,
Mhm.
and he said the exact same thing. He's like, "Well, Renee, 1,000,000 is really not that much
It's not.
anymore." And it's so very true,
Yeah.
right? But
'Cause the
I
property
think,
that I have is like 600,000, and I was like,
mhm,
"Well, that's 500,000 right there."
right,
Like, what else?
exactly,
Leave me with
exactly.
$400, but I'll pay off my student loans,
Mhm,
and then I'll probably set up a fund,
mhm,
to kinda help other people to get through college as well,
yeah,
from a especially in the education field, because 'cause I'm undergrad in it as an elementary educator,
okay,
to really help them learn how to transition into other fields. So, actually, that's
mhm,
what I would like to do is, I would like to fund some of that. But, yeah, with
yeah.
$1,000,000, you can't do too much, but
I
if it was
know, I
100,000,000, I could probably do quite a bit,
Yeah,
but
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can do quite a bit with that.
yeah.
Excellent. So the last question I'm going to ask is just around, what book or maybe podcast or movie that's related to finance would you recommend that people go out and check out right now?
Okay, can I do 2 books?
Absolutely.
Okay. Alright, well, the first one is not about finance, but I
Hmm.
definitely say you since we're talking about habits, I
Hmm.
really think this book, The Power of Habit by Charles
Excellent.
Duhigg, is definitely one of them.
Okay.
The,
Excellent.
second book I gotta give a shout out,
Ah,
is Get Good
yes.
with Money.
Yep.
Yes, by
Absolutely.
Tiffany Lee.
Yep. I would
And
ditto on that one for sure. Hmm.
yeah, because
Yeah.
it goes through soup to nuts of everything, and I got my
Hmm.
signed copy, so,
Oh, look at
like,
you.
yeah, trying to be official, right?
I love that. I love that.
Awesome.
Yeah, though I think those are some great choices for sure. Well, listen, Anthony, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been so much fun. It's been very informative. And I really hope and I believe that our listeners have found, have gotten some really good information from it, because you gave some great nuggets, some things for us to think about, how to kind of reframe the way we think about, some mindset mistakes and just how do we, basically build better financial habits. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Renee. It's been
Okay.
a pleasure.